Live from wherever you happen to be, it's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. And now, here's your host, curator of the Hall, Jamie Dew.
Man, just imagine that voice being your alarm clock in the morning. And you'll get some sense of what it's like to be me. That's right. It's Jamie Dew here, host of the SNL Hall of Fame podcast and curator of the museum that doesn't exist, but should. So there's that. I'll tell you what, if you're listening for the first time, you might be wondering, SNL Hall of Fame? I didn't know there was one. Well, there is. There's just no one in it yet. That's what we're doing here. Week over week, we are being visited by guests that are adding someone new to the ballot in one of four categories: cast member, host, musical guest, and writer. And once we fill the ballot at the end of the SNL season, we'll call on all the listeners out there to become voters, and we'll elect our first class of the SNL Hall of Fame. So far, we've got some really great candidates on the ballot, and I'm pretty pleased with the way things are going here, Tiki Boo 123. Shoot me an email, jamie@snlhof.com, if you're interested in guesting on the show, or you have questions about the hall, or you just want to say hey. I'd also love it if you would consider reviewing the show. I know, for as long as podcasts have existed, there have been hosts begging Android and or Google users to, cross that divide and become Apple users for a day and rate and review them in Apple. Well, you can rate and review us in Stitcher if you prefer. That's cool too. But apparently the Apple review has a little bit of weight, and that helps podcasts get noticed. And getting noticed is sort of why we do this, I think. I mean, I guess, who knows? I don't know. But at any rate, I do know that this week we have a great show for you. We have a great show. I am joined by Liz Shannon Miller, the LA-based TV writer for Collider. And we get into it where Lily Tomlin is concerned as the host. It's an interesting conversation because Lily Tomlin escapes me a little, and yet she was a pretty, on the tertiary of comedy, on the tertiary of my perspective of comedy, she was always there. She was always there, and she was a big deal. And I just never got to experience it in real time. And even when it was being replayed, I was a little on the younger side. It's only recently that it's really dawned on me, how important Lily Tomlin is in the world of comedy. This is the early 70s, and you have a female comedienne, as they would say. She's a comedian. She's a comedic actress. She's a performer. She's a writer. She has a lot going on in the right direction to earn her spot on the ballot. But Liz takes it over the top and brings it home and really cements the fact that she should be on that ballot. So when the time for voting comes, I hope you'll revisit this episode and think about Liz Shannon Miller as she discusses the addition of Lily Tomlin to the ballot of the SNL Hall of Fame.
I think it comes down to kind of what you look for in an SNL host. And for me, like, as someone who and I think this honestly can vary from person to person. I also think there are some hosts who come into SNL and really deliver, like, or really feel like members of the cast. And there are some who feel like, the show is bending around them. And, in recent years, I think you get a lot of people who are hosting who are kind of, sometimes it's like, oh yes, of course, Will Ferrell is going to be an incredible host. He was on the show for several years. He knows how this game works. And then sometimes it's like, I mean, I'm gonna go with like an old school example. Like Nancy Kerrigan is hosting the show. Like, that's not, she is a very talented young woman. That is not necessarily her area of expertise. And, these days, especially, I think, like, when the highest praise that an SNL host can get is, they feel like a member of the cast and they feel really game. And, admittedly, those episodes are really solid. Like when Regé Jean Page recently hosted, I thought he came in as a very, very much as an unknown quantity. The very few people who had heard of him because he was on Bridgerton, which is not necessarily what you think of when you think of SNL hosting host feeds or host experience. You can keep in all of that word garbage just then, because I own how badly that sentence came out. But my point is made. Anywho, the reason I say all that as a lead up to why I picked Lily Tomlin, because the thing that I find really fascinating about her as an SNL host, and something I kind of honestly wouldn't mind seeing in other SNL hosts these days, is that she came in as a known quantity. She came in as one of the best working comedians of her era. And she came in delivering, like, essentially a lot of what she'd already been delivering in other areas. But she did it in a way that worked in the SNL framework really well. She was incredibly funny. Her monologues are fantastic. I just think, like, she represents the kind of idiosyncratic comedic spirit that a show like SNL can really champion and showcase. And I feel like doesn't do often enough. Like the only other comparison point in my head I can think of right now is like when Zach Galifianakis hosted, and just like really brought his own special brand of weirdness to the episode in a way that, Lauren doesn't seem like Lauren really trusts a lot of people to do anymore. And maybe it was because Lily Tomlin was hosting. Lily Tomlin was putting in her hosting appearances relatively early in the show's run,
right?
Or maybe it's just like you can't tell Lily Tomlin what to do. But whatever the case was, I thought some great stuff came out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 solid episodes. I think you could argue with some really great sketch work. Mm-hmm. She is the lead in most of her sketches rather than, sort of a peripheral off to the side character. It really is sort of, her show playing with the not ready for primetime players. Liz, I'm wondering if you can talk to me about the number of times she hosted. She, like you say, it was early on, but she only appeared 3 times. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that you have to be a 5-timer or, somebody like Alec Baldwin or Steve Martin to be nominated in the hosting category. But is 3 times enough of a body of work to show what a host is capable of?
I think the mark of a great SNL host isn't necessarily longevity, even though that is a factor, to be sure. Like, hitting the 5-timers club is certainly an achievement of note. But, especially thinking about some of the episodes I've seen starring 5-timers and more, I think there's something to be said for one great iconic performance as opposed to one iconic hosting experience as opposed to like maybe basically hitting a whole bunch of ground balls. Like, you know, I would hope that as you continue this, like someone with like Donald Glover, who is only, to the best I remember, only hosted once. But I would hope that he'd be someone in consideration because his episode was extraordinary. And it was something, you know, from what I've heard, he was very involved with the writing of it, and which is of course an important thing. Because, I think it's honestly like, if especially in the world of SNL where there's so much, just being memorable on one night, I think has more meaning to me than than like how many times you've appeared.
That's fair. Yeah, no, I think I can get behind your argument there. For the record, a host must have appeared twice. They must have hosted twice to be considered for nomination. And Lily does meet that threshold for sure. She's appeared 3 times. So I guess I'm just being a bit of a nitpicker. Switching gears for a moment, I wonder if you could take us through what it is exactly, the intangible, or, what it is about Lily Tomlin, and what she brings to 8H. Good and bad, I guess.
What she brings to the show is not terribly different. In fact, it might be completely identical to what she has done in other platforms. Like she, essentially she has characters she does really well that she performed all the time across many different, opportunities. And, so when it's like, I guess it's similar to like, if you invite Paul Simon on SNL, he's gonna play a great Paul Simon song. If you invite Lily Tomlin on the show, she's gonna play a great Lily Tomlin character. And the thing that matters in this case is, technically she's supposed to be doing SNL and not just the Lily Tomlin show. And I think that's like there's actually in her 1983 appearance, she literally opens with "Live from New York." It's the Lily Tomlin show,
right?
It's part of a whole bit, but like that. Anyways, you could argue that she's not really hosting SNL; she's hosting the Lily Tomlin show. Even in episodes where she doesn't flat out acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And so I'm giving you your counter argument,
right.
But I also think she's just really funny.
Oh God,
like,
yeah.
She even when she's just doing herself and just having a fun little monologue where she sings and dances and talks about her worries, like it's just really charming.
This week, but right now, at this very moment, I have to admit I'm a little nervous. I mean, a live 90-minute television show is not exactly soothing to the central nervous system. Of course, I think most actors worry a lot. Today, I think most people in general worry a lot. In fact, anybody who's not worried, I worry about. I mean, I worry that I have no idea how much $1 trillion is. And I worry that no one in Washington does either. I worry that the person who thought up leisure suits is busy thinking up what we should do with our leisure time. I worry terribly that we all forget to wash our barbecue grills. I worry that we invented quality control because we thought if we didn't control it, it could get out of hand. And I worry so much. I worry about everything today being trivialized, and that one day the Pulitzer Prize will be awarded to a 30-second Coke commercial. I also worry about what happened to the American dream. I worry that it's being made in Japan, cheaper and more efficiently. And I most of all worry that they'll take my Bank America card, stick it in the machine, and the message will come back, kill her at once. But most of all, I worry that all this worrying creates stress. So forget your worries and forget your woes. Dry your eyes and blow your nose. If you've got no job and you're filled in your buckle, you can let it out here with a laugh and a chuckle. Sure, the world may need some fixing, but at least it won't be done by Richard Nixon. Some of us are working at a minimum wage, and some of us are working on a minimum wage. Some people say the president's unkind, but he's not so unkind as he is behind. But now somehow put your worries in the past. Be carefree with me and the rest of the cast. Things will be all right. Don't be gloomy. Put your arm around your roomie and watch Saturday Night.
I mean, it's always interesting when you have like a really strong comedian host SNL, how they basically, end up basically becoming the star of the show. Whereas like, when you have a less notable person, then somebody who's less strong, it really becomes a showcase for the cast that week. And, Lily Tomlin, is definitely an example of the former. And this is why I think I started this basically by saying, and this is why I started this by saying it's kind of a personal preference thing. Like if you're looking for a host who basically doesn't gum up the works, or doesn't gum up the works and doesn't it lets the cast really do what they do, then Lily Tomlin is not your platonic ideal of a great SNL host, but she is someone really interesting as a result. I will note that something it's worth mentioning about Lily Tomlin, especially in her 1983 appearance, is that in 2021, it would no longer be acceptable for her to do a blackface character the way that she used to. It's, not ideal. It was not a good idea then. It's not a good idea now. And I would be remiss in saying that I honestly nominated her, and then really thinking about it, I wanted to make sure I at least mentioned that. Because, Purvis Hawkins, who was the quote unquote musical guest that episode. Right. Again, not something that would be cool today at all, and something that shouldn't have been cool back then.
No. I'm glad that we've, landed where we've landed, and we don't have to deal with as much of that baggage anymore. So I really do appreciate you, calling that out. To make a complete left turn, I'm wondering if you have up your sleeve like a signature sketch or a signature moment for Lily Tomlin that you would bring up. Anything come to mind?
I mean, for me, I genuinely, I've already mentioned her monologue once, but that one really, I really appreciate her just doing a very simple piece on a very simple stage. And it's just her. There's no character she's hiding behind. It's just her talking to the audience with a little bit of musical accompaniment, and it really works. And it's just like a really nice, light bit of entertainment. And it's like, it's the sort of stuff that it looks so simple that you think it's easy, and it's the sort of thing that only like a gifted handful of people can pull off.
That's right. Hall of Famers. This is the nut of your argument. She is a Hall-worthy host, and whether or not she is elected in, we shall see. But she has now been nominated, so that's very cool. Liz, I want to wrap on one last question. Do you think Lily has another hosting gig potentially up her sleeve? I know that's out of left field, but just curious what you think. What do you think?
Well, she's still around, man. I actually saw a petition for her to come back and host with Jane Fonda. on change.org. I mean, it's like a change.org petition. There's one for everything. But yeah, I mean, why not? Betty White hosted, and Betty White was older, I guess. I think. Actually, I don't know the exact math on that, but yeah, I mean, I think Lily Tomlin is at the point now, of course, where if she doesn't have to do anything she doesn't want to do, and bless her for it. But it would be fun to see her host one more time, with or without Jane Fonda.
Yeah. Good answer. Well, Liz, I really want to thank you for coming by today to nominate Lily Tomlin for a spot on the ballot. Whether or not she is elected, we shall find out. Where, though, in the interim, can people find out more information about you on the interwebs?
I am senior TV editor at Collider right now, so you can find me at collider.com writing about all the television, mostly Marvel shows. But beyond that, you can also find me on Twitter at LIZLET. That's Lizlet with an I and an E.
Lizlet, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a blast.
It's fun. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Wasn't that great? Lily Tomlin, huh? Who'da thunk it? Probably not the first name at the tip of our tongues when we think of legendary Hall of Fame caliber SNL hosts. But I think that Liz Shannon Miller made a, very good case for why she should appear on the ballot and ultimately why she should appear in the HOF. So there's that. It's actually Saturday night tonight. It is, there was a new episode of the show on. So I look forward to watching that and sitting back and enjoying myself with Billie Eilish hosting and being the musical guest. I think that's pretty fucking cool. So I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing you again next week. And looking forward to just, hanging out with the Hall of Fame. In the interim, turn out the lights. The Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. You can find everything you need to know about the show at snlhof.com. Don't forget to subscribe, share, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcast. This is Doug Denant saying, see you next month in the Hall.
To podcasts and such.